My dad worked real hard. In fact, my dad worked so hard that sometimes I felt that my mother was raising us alone. I was young, 10 years old, and I was sad because we didn't get to see him much because he worked 3 jobs just to keep us going. I remember thinking back at that time, it was as if he was playing a character in someone else's story. No control, just playing a part other people dictate. And after a while, something clicked in him. He worked his way up fast, and before long, he was supervising people twice his age, telling them what to do, getting things done. And his bosses were always asked to him, hey, can you find us some people? Can you help us fill this shift? Can you get things done? And one day, he thought about it and said, I'm already doing this. I'm already finding the people. I'm already organizing the work. If I can do this for them, I can do it for myself. As a high school age kid, I was intrigued at watching this story unfold. That was the first time I saw my father take control of his story and become the leading man. See, when you're a background person, you're in the background. You're not the main position. But when you're the leading character, the story is yours. It revolves around you. He built his business and became successful, employing people in our town and beyond. And he made it a mission to make sure that the next generation would have real opportunities. My dad didn't go to college. My mom didn't go to college. And most of his brothers and sisters didn't either. But he made it a mission, and he took control of the fact that he made it so we can go, as well as the children of his brothers and sisters. And at that point, I started to think about life differently. Less like a series of random events and more like a book. Chapters. Some you choose and some you don't. But either way, you still have to decide what came next. And that idea stayed with me. Soon after, I decided on a decision of my own. I was going to write my life my way. And the way my father lived his life laid out my path. I've been an owner, a principal, a partner, a consultant, and I built a business to over $8 million in revenue. Now, we should all be proud of all the chapters in our lives because we will come out of them and we should be better for it. Everything we go through leads us to where we are. And wherever we are in our lives, we are always going to either be ending one chapter or starting the next. If we're learning as we write, every chapter gets better, more resilient, more controlled, with better outcomes. Every chapter doesn't begin with opportunity. Some come from struggle, right? And we all have those. It could be loss. It could be family issues. It could be financial pressure. It could be the loss of a relationship. We all have struggled at one time or another. And sometimes the chapters are hard. See, I've been married twice and I've gone through 2 divorces. And one of those divorce chapters was very difficult for me. I realized that I had a gambling problem. And the thing about addiction, it's really strange. Addiction convinces you that you are in control, while quietly taking the pen from your hand. And it takes away your ability to be real. At first, it feels manageable until it starts rewriting your relationships, your trust, and your identity. Confronting the fact that I was not the author of that chapter in my life was painful. I was reacting, escaping, and avoiding my truth. So recovery for me was taking the pen back. It was for me saying that this happens, but this does not get to choose what happens next. And once you take the pen back, everything gets light, and you feel a weight fall off your shoulders. Think about a time when you got out of a bad relationship, or when you had a job that you just had to leave because you just didn't enjoy it. But when you stopped doing something that you know you shouldn't have been doing in the first place. When the emotional dust settles and you find yourself back on the path, then you can write your story. Well, now I'm in my third marriage. And I have to tell you that I've been married for 25 years and I'm having the time of my life. And it didn't happen by accident. It happened because we were intentional about it. It happened because we both made the decision to be leading characters in our story. But sometimes life tells you that you don't control everything. And we all have moments like that. Moments that stop. In 2021, I was diagnosed with prostate cancer. And I wasn't really surprised because some other men in my family have had it. And at one point, I thought that this was going to be my chapter 2. But knowing someone in your family, knowing that it can happen to you, doesn't make it any easier when to sit across from a doctor and he says, you have cancer. And I remember sitting there thinking about my life, the good chapters, the ones I wish I could have changed, and the ones I hoped I still had left. And I realized that I can't control this diagnosis, but I can control how I responded to it. So I chose treatment, I chose perspective, and I chose not to let fear decide how the chapter ended. Now, sometimes we stay in a chapter too long, and sometimes we end a chapter too quickly. And sometimes, like my father did, we take ourselves out of our own story and become supporting actors in somebody else. And it can happen quietly, sometimes out of fear, sometimes out of responsibility, even out of love. when the real question surfaces. If this isn't my life, then whose is it? And how long have I been living it for them? And that moment, as painful as it is a gift. I want you to consider the chapter that you're in right now. Not the one you post about, not the one you talk about, but the real one. I want you to ask yourself two questions. Are you staying because you're growing? And answering this question will help you to determine whether you are intentional about the direction of your soul. And two, are you staying because you're afraid of the blank page? And this question will help you decide whether or not you need to move on from this chapter and go to the next. The book doesn't end when life gets messy. And the chapter doesn't end when it's painful. It only ends when you decide not to choose. You are the author, and the pen is already in your hand. And whether the next chapter is bold, uncertain, inspired, or truly magnificent, it is waiting for you to write. And let me leave you with this. Life is a book that we all have to decide how it's written. We don't get to control what happens, but we do get to decide how we control the outcomes of our story.